Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Smith of the In the Black VTF here at www.t3live.com with today's market wrap up. And, well, a nice rally to start off the week. So let's discuss rehash over what I talked about this morning, what happened, what didn't happen, and what could happen going forward. So we looked at the SPY and said momentum hammer here on the highs, which means chance to cover the shorts on Friday. They didn't do it. Stops go off, puts us into the highs. We looked at the weekly and said, tried to hit them. May as well take a shot to the upside. So we're starting off this week by going to the upside. The other thing we like to look at on the opening is some of the gaps. And so Altera, we talked about this morning. Gap and sit, didn't really get much out of that. And Intel with that had a late push. Went inside weak and up, but it took a while. So it was no real gap there. The gap was more in Altera, and talked about looking at the different strengths and weaknesses within there. As Broadcom being one of the stronger names in there, closing back towards the highs. I talked to MU about MU being one of the weaker, and then how do we know that thing might turn around with the strength in the sector and stuff like that? You can see still within this channel down, but as it gets down to here, it didn't take out Friday's lows, and then as it did that, you look at the inside 30s here, inside 30 here to try and go back to the upside, inside 30 here. We look for these equilibriums, and I'll talk more about that importance of these equilibriums as I keep going forward here on this video. We talked about LinkedIn being a laggard here too and having some problems and being an inside day. So the question here is when it gaps down, anytime something gaps, especially off an equilibrium, the question is it gap and go, gap and sit, or gap and reverse? And so if it gaps and reverses, it has the potential of recapturing this inside day. So there's three important points to look at on a day like today in LinkedIn. One is the opening, and if you look at the opening, what does it do right out the chute? What does it do? Well, the 5-minute range here, and I'll shrink that down a little bit more so you can see it, takes out the 5-minute range and starts running back up into the gap. So at this point, because it's volatile, I'm looking for an inside 5 to try and continue this up, which was very nice in here. And then on the daily, the 2 points here that are important to look at on something that's acting like this is once it gaps down below the range, right? Once it comes back in, first of all, the equilibrium recapture, which is the inside bar. So when we're looking for a buy setup or to take it right as it takes out 195.94 because it recaptures that, right? It's also important because it goes bullish engulfing at that point. Right, so it's the same price, but the two different reasons why that's important: bullish engulfing and recapturing that equilibrium. So important, nice little move there in LinkedIn. Netflix talked about that being one of the outperforming names, and it just kind of hung up there all day until it made new highs. And talked about Google being somewhat neutral, and you can see it pretty much was, although there was some nice action here on the 60. And so what we look for here is the slight lower low down into here. And then here, the outside bar, hammer. Because I know that it's a broadening formation on a shorter term time frame because it has to. It took out both sides, the highs and the lows. So when it took out here, was when we started looking to get on the long side, although still somewhere in neutrality land. Did not take out last week's highs or lows. Also talked about ASANA, and you can see how this worked out. This was a real thing of beauty. When you get that gap up there, 15-minute shooting star, and just down inside 15 into oblivion. And you got Ann Taylor with that. So also going to see XRT retail. And XRT retail here on the weekly. Getting close, but hasn't taken out the weekly here. Right, just yet. And so that's going to be important to see this going forward because this is the kind of equilibriums we're going to be looking for to continue or negate today's rally. And I'll get into more of that kind of stuff soon. I talked about the Walmart, and the Walmart took out the inside weak to the upside. So a nice little push there for the Walmart on the daily up through there. We'll be watching to see if that can maintain. Costco, on the other hand, was slightly higher and didn't really do much. And I'm still looking to see if it can take out last week's highs with that XRT here, which is what we call a reversal strat, and that's where the inside weak broke to the downside, comes back, opens and closes within the range, and to see if we can take out last week's highs and set up to do that and target to see if it could come off the low. Still handily looking like it would be an inside week to start off, but once again, inside day here for the target. Try and see if it can get back into the gap. Also looked at the different types of trannies, and the trannies, once the trannies started moving, everybody's saying, oh, the trannies are so weak. I'm like, well, not today, they aren't. And trying to come off that support level on the weekly here. And if we started to move higher, talked about looking at the FedEx being one of the stronger names because it's weekly hammer and looking to try and take out the inside month here, which it did above 175.30, and a nice move after that. Also talked about looking at FAS and holding its strength, and whether the regional banks was just a pullback with profit taking on Friday or real selling, and we got our answer. Just a little profit taken from the week within the realm of the uptrend and back towards the highs is KRE. Another thing that's interesting to look at too is when you have a market that's going ticking straight up slowly but surely on all time frames like the SPY was today, and it's a very tough short. People might jump in and jump out, but what you want to look for is that relative performance, that relative strength and weakness, and we got that in GMCR right at the chute, and they just started to clobber this thing, as you can see here, just right out the chute, and just looking for shorter term signals in here. You can look at stuff like with the semis coming up, stuff like microchip here. You can see how weak that was during the day. The tobacco stocks, MO, LO, you had Mattel, stuff like that to go after when you're trying to go after the downside, and AGU, as well as you can start looking at sectors, and you can see XME here handily underperforming pretty much all day, and a bunch of those rocks having all sorts of trouble, and you know how bad the coals have been, and now BTU to see if this thing can join the other ones down under $1, and still $3 to do that on that. Another interesting point we talked about was crude oil and the oil stocks, and this is going to be real important going into tomorrow. USO proxy for the crude oil stayed inside on the day, and it's still inside on the week, so this has not yet picked a direction. So just like you've heard of turnaround Tuesdays, the way that occurs is that when we have a move like this, the reason it would turn around is if people are hoping that what didn't happen today happens tomorrow, and the market starts to reverse, you're going to see some people jump and run. So if you look at XLE goes inside day here. So is the OIH, and OIH is also an inside week. So the question is, are the oils going to reconfirm this rally? Can we go without them, or are they going to try and negate it by dropping down? And so tomorrow, you have inside days all over the place. So you've got Seadrill, Halliburton, ExxonMobil, and ExxonMobil's in the Dow. So the question is, we go down, sideways measured, move out of here. We'll be keeping an eye on that. You've got Chevron here, broke the inside week to the downside. So we want to be aware of that. You've got COG here, still inside day, APC. All these energies to keep an eye on. APA. You've got Baker Hughes. You've got SM Energy, WLL. So all that stuff going to be important to look at tomorrow, as well as what didn't work, what went down today. So when I showed you that Chevron weekly, what kind of equilibrium stuff was breaking to the downside? We had Alcoa going to the downside. You had ESV Energy. So that was your indication that some of these things, that those things might stay inside day if you start getting more breaks. You had the Chevron, ESV, BP breaks slightly to the downside. You had JSO Solar and Yelp all breaking weeks to the downside, albeit slightly, in Yelp gap to do it. And with that JSO, that gives you an indication to watch those solars. And during the day, CSIQ, all sorts of trouble here. And you can see this perfect broadening formation here. And it gave you an extended measured move, which was really nice here. Once you can identify the triangle here, like that, once it breaks into here on a very strong day in the market, you can also see the inside 15 here and up. And then down here, inside 15, inside 30, gives you the measured move to the downside. Real nice. Oops. Sorry, inside 15 now. So for tomorrow, not only do we want to look at these oils because they're staying inside, also the things that were strong today to see if they continue. But where are the pockets of inside days at? Because these are the equilibriums that form today. They're going to help reconfirm everything or negate it tomorrow. And so in certain sectors, if you look at the tech sector, you had analog devices stays inside, Facebook stays inside. You have VMW staying as an inside day. You have Texas Instruments. You have NXPI, and there was a lot of strength in that sector there to see with the catch up with the SWKS and stuff like that was very strong. So NXPI going to be important. You can see FEYE goes inside day here to see how that goes. You've got in the banks Wells Fargo. You've got HIG there and more financials, Capital One, all staying inside days. In the Dow Jones, DuPont stays inside day near the basement. McDonald's stays inside day. You've got UTEX staying inside day. And you might look at these charts and go, Rob, this is doing nothing. I'm like, it's got to go somewhere. It's going to try. These things are going to try and reconfirm or negate what's going on. After the bell, we've got Urban Outfitters coming out, getting slammed here. And you can see that was bearish engulfing, but goes back into this range. And this is right now trying to resolve to the downside. You'll see this triangle expansion here. And also good news for us, UVXY announces a reverse split of 5-for-1, and we've been waiting for that for a while because anybody who knows what we do it in the black here at T3 Live, we definitely live off of the VIX products, and we like to get them prices back up so it can evaporate again. All right, that's going to do it for today. Hope everybody had a good trading day. It was a nice day to be cruising on the long side. We're going to see if all this stuff confirms or negates all of this stuff tomorrow. All right, everybody, have a good night. I'm Rob Smith of the In the Black VTF here at www.t3live with today's market wrap-up.